This is the third little time lapse of building up the After Hours map for Gary's mod. This one is starting out on a new street, a little kind of weird suburban street. I'm just kind of smashing random houses and shops and things like that together that I think just look cool. So this will be quite a fucking hodgepodge at the end. I've already got the house that I grew up in as a little kid built, as well as a house that I saw in Marquette, Michigan. One of the first buildings that I make, apart from those two houses, is a pasty shop not too far from here in Clawson, Michigan, called Barb's Pasties. I really want to try them. They look really good. Here I'm pretty much just adding, little details and everything to Barb's after finishing out the rough geometry of it. Here I'm starting in on a new building. This one is pretty close to the teleport, so I'm going to have to copy that to both the near and far side. This is the former Nye Club in Royal Oak. This one is across from National Coney Island on Main Street. It was open for quite a bit, but the pandemic ended up killing it. Seemed like a pretty cool, little party place, but the place has been abandoned now for quite a bit and is a little deteriorated at this point. Doing the awning skeleton here out of just brushwork is actually a pretty good time. Same with the sign here, it's got some fun geometry to it. The street's already been populated by quite a few generic buildings that I just kind of templated off of each other, you know, random, just whatevers I decided to make, mostly based loosely on the shot of the Marquette house, which includes 2 or 3 other homes. This time I'm working on another new building. This one is some random office for like an insurance agency or some shit on Woodward. This one's got a slight bit more complicated geometry. Most of the ones I've done up to this point are fairly straightforward. This one with these kind of diving angled windows is a little bit trickier to nail down. At first I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to build an inside really, but I figured out pretty quickly I kind of had to. So I go ahead and get everything prepped for actually making an interior that makes sense. Similar to the other streets that I've already set up previously, this is another seamless teleport from one end of the street to the other, making an infinite loop. So I need to copy this nightclub all the way over to the far side of this loop. Now I'm going to steal some lights from Barb's pasties and put them over here on the Woodward office. So this is another area I'm setting up here. It's going to be the interior lobby area of a hotel over by 16 Mile and I-75. Here I am setting up the exterior of the hotel, mostly the ramp and the covered awning kind of thing going down to the parking deck, as well as the hotel exterior itself. Continuing work on the hotel exterior, I go ahead and set up the actual windows and walls and everything that I'll eventually end up duplicating. Also picking some textures as well. Kind of splitting up the ground too here to work on different textures for, like a garden bed, a sidewalk, things like that. Now for a very important part, this is the World Brush bounding box that contains this entire area. Most of the exterior of the hotel is just going to be funk detail since it's curved. I really don't want that slicing badly. Speaking of, here I am funk detailing all of the applicable geometry in the hotel that I want to be funk detailed. Now I'm going to go ahead and create the adjacent parking deck that little awning covered walkway leads to. Here I'm working on the lighting on the underside of that covered walkway, the awning above you. I unintentionally created a leak between the interior and exterior of the hotel, so I go ahead and fix that now. Now we're going to go ahead and do a funk detail pass on the deck and make sure that everything's looking kosher there. We'll start by adding some walls to the back end of this. I've decided at this point that I want to actually make the interior explorable. Now we're going to go ahead and do a few detail passes on the inside of the deck itself. Previously, I had experimented with using a normal skybox for this map, but I think it looks better with black in the end. I'm going to go ahead and kind of optimize these brushes on the ground, make sure that there's as few as possible. When I was cutting, it was getting kind of sloppy, so I want to clean that up now. We're going to need a way to get up and down the deck at this point, so I go ahead and add some ramps in, just kind of work on the interior of the deck in general. Previously, I had the top of this covered walkway set to no draw since I wasn't expecting people to be up in the deck. I go ahead and remove those now. While testing out the changes I just made to the parking deck, I realized that actually it had started leaking. However, it wasn't near the parking deck itself. It was over in the Fisher building, which is a spot that we haven't really seen yet very much. That I must have deleted some random piece of the floor, which allowed everything to leak out of there, so I'm going to fix that really quickly. I'm going to be flipping between the game and hammer at this point, and it's probably going to look pretty bad, so warning. Around this time, I realized it had been like months at this point since I had done a proper check on the vids leaves in the map, making sure that they actually seemed reasonable. Starting with the main street, one of the first streets that I created with the looping teleport and everything, there is a bunch of level geometry that is kind of hidden behind the Adams Travelers building and a few other buildings along your way up the road. They're not visible from the road itself, but are still loaded in pretty much at all times, which is not particularly good. I start off by trying to put some world geometry around this whole area, trying to cut it off from pretty much everything else. I do end up finding two errors. This one last step in front of my old house, that one is still world geometry, as well as these weird angled concrete toppers to these little brick walls. Those are also for some reason world geometry. I've got the basic world geometry set up around it at this point, however, it doesn't seem to be cordoning it off quite the way I want to. It's probably I've gone a little bit too far with funk detail, but I'll come back to that a little bit later. At this point, I end up going around the map in general, just looking for weird little errors. I finally realized my error of kind of going a little bit overboard with funk detail, so at this point I go ahead and revert some of those changes and more appropriately dole out the funk detail. With the hallways set as world geometry, now the viz calculations will actually call out the street when you're in the interiors and call out the interiors when you're in the street. I'm kind of just randomly moving around and finding things that need detail pass, so I add some lights to the tunnel here, and then I also move some windows into their correct position. Back at the hotel, I'm going ahead and adding a little bit of detail to the garden bed in front of the windows here, as well as adding a second entrance to the deck. Here I'm playing around with the proportions of these walls just a little bit to try and figure out what feels right. Also what restricts some sight lines just a little bit. Wanting to add a little bit of detail to the parking deck, I go ahead and add a little elevator or lift room, where you can go up and down all the floors of the parking deck. However, instead of having a door to a stairwell like normal to go up and down as well, I'm actually going to have these doors lead to weird and bizarre things that don't make a lot of sense in context. Like, for instance, this third floor one is going to lead to an uncomfortably long staircase that will probably lead up to a photo gallery similar to my last map, or maybe like a dev room or something along those lines. I end up stealing the staircase from this smart station to Fisher Building transitional kind of hallway here. I didn't have a lot of room to play with here. I'm actually pretty much crammed between two areas, this kind of Royal Oak scene and the suburb street that I had started the video with. I'm narrowly navigating a very thin strip of space between those two. The staircase ends up popping out on top of the suburb street. I managed to hide this staircase from being seen from the outside, either outside of the lift room or from the ground, simply by making everything black to blend into the sky. With that kind of started a new little project here. I go ahead and get back to detail passes, this time in the parking deck again. I'm adding in these concrete spars. A lot of the parking decks that I typically end up in have these little bars across the top of concrete, as well as these drop ceilings as well sometimes. I'll end up copying this later to the rest of the deck and the other floors as well. In addition to that, I also add into the elevator room a faux elevator facade. Now I'm going to go ahead and take the floor 3 room that I've just created and copy that down to floor 2 and adjust it for the height of this floor. I'll go ahead and also cut a hole into the wall here for its own secret hallway. Looking at wallpaper, I find one that I quite like and realize that I kind of want to make something akin to the ashtray maze from Control. Similarly, I go ahead and copy floor 2 to the ground now. Don't have to adjust the height too much, thankfully, because of the similar sizes. After messing around with some textures for the exterior of these 2 rooms, I go ahead and start tunneling my way through, directly through the wall and down a little bit into the Royal Oak area, just near the music club where you can play a few of my tracks. I also add some fog to the ashtray maze itself. The whole idea with the ashtray maze, similar to in Control, is that if you haven't met the entry requirements, you won't be able to actually enter the ashtray maze. In my case, the hallway will lead you to a simple U-turn, and the U-turn will lead you directly back to the entrance if you haven't answered a payphone, roughly where this first ground floor's little secret tunnel leads to over in the Royal Oak area. Off camera, I've actually added in a phone booth and a still smoking ashtray next to it, which will ring until you answer it. Answering the payphone then enables a teleport in that U-turn that was previously disabled, which then leads you into the actual maze itself. I finish off the tunnel between the hotel area and the Royal Oak area, as well as adding some lighting to the lift rooms themselves. More detail passes in the hotel and the parking deck, adding some lighting into the deck itself in between those spars that I created originally. Also adding some lighting here as well. Utilizing one of the street lamps that bolts to a telephone pole, I go ahead and make myself a telephone pole and bolt this thing to it, just to make a slightly shorter light for this upper floor building. I start to work on the teleportation for the ashtray maze. You see, I actually want to have the player more or less walk directly in a straight line and using the fog hide the fact that they're teleporting to a different spot into the maze itself. I work on the logic for the phone system a little bit more, making it so that answering the phone activates the teleport inside of the maze. Now we're going back for some more detailing in the hotel. This time I want to add some plants to the hotel garden itself. Followed by copying that garden over to the other side of the hotel. As a random aside, I start messing around with cedar trees in the suburb street. I start copying over cars and trucks just to fill up the deck a little bit. On the third floor, I add one with some lights on. coming back to the hotel again, I start working on the lobby door as well as the walls around it. And of course for the door, I'm going to go ahead and set up a normal sliding glass door for it. I was pretty bad at recording for this, so there's quite a bit of footage of me actually working on things missing, but this does catch quite a few highlights here and there. I hope it was interesting to watch, my very clunky hammer process. You may have also noticed that I'm not using hammer ++ anymore because it pissed me off and I couldn't fucking get it to stop being a total bitch. So I gave it the can, and I'm just using normal hammer, and it's fine. I appreciate you sticking around for such a long-ass video. Even though it's supposed to be a speed build, it is anything but speedy at 30-something fucking minutes long. So, thank you for watching. I am probably going to go record a little tour of the map as it is right now and maybe work at getting that uploaded so you can also take a look at it as well. And I will see you eventually. Bye.